Good evening and welcome to the July 12th meeting of the Planning Board for the Town of Chatham. My name is Catherine Halpern. I'm Chair of the Planning Board for the Town of Chatham. This meeting is being conducted by, the Planning Board is present in the large meeting room at the Annex on George Ryder Road. However, we are having remote participation only for the public. And also, I understand this evening our presenters are going to be connected by remote participation. Since we're doing this mixed procedure of the Planning Board is present and others are remote, let me review some of our procedures for remote participation. This meeting of the Chatham Planning Board is being conducted in person and also via remote for public participation, and this is in accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and shall afford adequate alternative means of public access via Microsoft Teams and also by calling the phone number 508-945-4410. That's 1-508-945-4410, and the conference ID number is 258-382-610#. That's 258-382-610#. And you may also join the meeting online using Microsoft Teams through the link that is on the agenda that's posted on the town website on the Planning Board page. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410 with the conference ID number 258-382-610#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. And it is all right to record the meeting, but you do need to notify us. May I ask if anyone is recording the meeting? All right. There being none, let's go ahead. In the event that anyone inadvertently becomes muted, if you are connected by phone, you may press *6 on your phone. I will ask at this time that, again, as we have been doing in our remote meetings, that we will have only one speaker at a time, and that speaker is the person recognized by the chair. Everyone else, if you're connected remotely, if you're not speaking, would you kindly disable your video and mute your microphones? Again, that just helps with the clarity of the broadcast. So if you're not speaking, if you could turn off your microphones and disable your video. And also, Planning Board members, if you're not speaking, you have an on and off button on your microphones as well, if you can pay attention to that. We will be following these procedures. I'll begin with a roll call of all the board members. If there are non-board members or members of the public who wish to make a comment or question when recognized by the chair, and you wish to begin speaking, would you kindly repeat your name and the last 4 digits of your phone number if connected by phone. Again, the public is by remote participation only for this meeting, and we would like to be able to clearly identify all speakers. Also, after any agenda item has been discussed by the Planning Board, the chair will request if any citizens, non-board members have any questions or comments, and when recognized by the chair, you will be able to ask your questions or make your comments. At this point, when the Planning Board votes, we will continue to do all of our votes by roll call vote. And at the end of the meeting, again, we will end with verbal confirmation of adjournment, and we'll note the time of adjournment. So let's begin with a roll call of all the board members. Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin, present.
Arthur Sprue,
Arthur Sprue, present.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, present.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter, present.
Tom Gagan,
Tom Gagan, present.
and Bob Dubus.
Bob Dubus, present.
And I'm Catherine Halpern, I'm also present. Then I will ask if anyone on the board needs to recuse themselves from any matters on the agenda tonight. I actually do need to recuse myself from matters pertaining to Chatham Bars Inn. Our Vice Chair, Arthur Sprue, will be handling the proceedings for those matters. All right. So with that being said, let's continue to our first agenda item, which are the minutes for the June 28th, 2021 meeting. I'll just ask any board members if you have any corrections or additions to the minutes. Bob Wirtschafter?
Yeah, there's a small typo in recommendations to zoning board, 24 Salt Pond, the first paragraph, the last line, which reads, did not to take any action. I believe there's a need in there, did not
Need to take, yes.
any action.
That's correct. Thank you. Any other amendments, corrections,
Catherine,
additions? Yes, Roger.
Minor, again, minor. Roger, I see periodically comes and goes. Under Roger Griffin, again, it's without the D. It's very minor.
Oh, yes, okay, the spelling of Roger Griffin's name, if we can correct it to R-O-D-G-E-R. Thank you, Roger. Any other corrections, additions to the minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 28th? Oh, another one? Bob
Yeah,
Wirtschafter,
it
please
has me
go ahead.
both present and absent.
All right.
I'm good, but I can't.
But you can't quite be in two places at once yet. Okay, great. And you were present, yes. So we need to remove the absence of Bob.
I was absent.
Oh, you were absent. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, okay. So we need to remove Bob Wirtschafter from present. Any other corrections, additions? All right,
I move to accept the minutes as
thank you.
corrected.
Thank you.
Second.
So let's do a roll call vote. Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin, present.
do you vote to
I'm
approve
sorry,
the minutes?
sorry, Roger Griffin approves, exactly.
That's all right. Arthur Sprue,
Arthur Sprue, approve.
Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter.
Bob Wirtschafter, abstain.
That's right. And Tom Gagan.
Tom Gagan, approve.
All right. And Bob Dubus.
Bob Dubus, approve.
Great. So the minutes are approved. The next item on our agenda is a site plan review for a pre-application for 356 and 366 Shore Road with Chatham Bars Inn. I do need to recuse myself for this matter, and I will let our Vice Chair, Arthur Sprue, handle the proceedings. Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, I'd like to start with the applicant, if he's available to give us a presentation and background about this proposed application. Andrew,
sir, Mr.
is that you?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Andrew Singer. I am here this evening with Marion Rose from our office, as well as Gary Thulander, the general manager of Chatham Bars Inn. Nate Jones is the project engineer, and Chris Cannon's the project architect. This is a pre-site plan review for the plan that's on the screen in front of you. This is a request to construct shared beach access stairs. It would service 63 guest rooms in 10 buildings that you see for a total of up to 140 people. At present, the guests on this part of the property have to walk either up or down Shore Road to the fish pier or to the main Chatham Bars Inn stairway. This proposal would provide safer, more direct access to the beach. We reviewed the staff comments that Ally submitted, plus the others that you've received to date. Again, this is pre-review. We appreciate the chance to hear your feedback. This proposal won't have any traffic or parking impacts, nor will it have stormwater impacts. It is just, what's on the plan for the steps, landings, and stairs down. There are two sections at the end on the beach that will be seasonal and will be removed, and those are labeled on the plan. There will be lighting and outlets on the structure, and there will be a foot rinse station at the base of the permanent stairs before you get to the seasonal portions. We are going before Conservation Commission this week. We will be coming back to you for formal review later this month, and we will need to be going to the Board of Appeals, which we are scheduled for in late August. Any of us who are here this evening, be happy to answer any questions. We believe that this will be a good proposal to help keep the people who are here on, directing down, keep them off the street so they can get down to the beach. It will have minimal impacts. It will obviously have to be approved by Conservation as well as the Board of Appeals. And with that, any of us who are here, we can all turn our cameras on as needed, but we're all here. If you have questions, we look forward to discussing this with you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, so as part of the process, what I'd like to begin with is the board members can ask their comments or have any questions for the applicant. Again, I'll go through them, board members one at a time. Then we'll open it up to the public for any questions if there's any that they have. And then we'll entertain a motion on this application. So what I'd like to do is begin with, I'll go to my right here with Warren Chain. If you have any comments, questions for the applicant?
Yes, it's Warren Chain. Mostly for clarification, is this stairway going to be open to the public? Is it public access, or is it somehow going to be gated or restricted so only the guests in those 53 rooms would be able to use it?
This is Andrew. The initial response is that it is not intended for public access. It is intended for guests access. I would ask Gary Thulander, who is still, I believe, still on the line, if he has, or anyone else on the team who would like to follow up on that, but it is not intended for public access.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. This is Gary Thulander, and just to respond to that, it will be used for the 63 guest rooms in that area, and just for the convenience only. We aren't going to have restricting it at all, but it will be for hotel guests since we're going to a private beach.
Okay, thank you for clarification. There's been a lot of, I think, positive action taken with the approval of the Conservation Commission with respect to, I'll say, clearing of invasives and landscaping the slope in front of the units on which you're proposing to put the stairs. For my education, was there anything in the Conservation Commission's approval which somehow restricted or prohibited or required any additional actions on your part that might affect these stairs?
We could turn to Nate Jones from Coastal Engineering if we could.
Yep, this is Nate Jones, Coastal Engineering. So yeah, the last time that CBI went in front of Conscom for this area, there was some proposed pools, but along with that was the complete restoration of the coastal bank. So it was invasive removal and planting of natives along the coastal bank. So the area of the stairs will be going through that area, but along with this proposal, we are including a mitigation plan for conservation's approval. So we will actually be adding some additional native plants to the bank in the surrounding areas around the staircase.
I noticed when it was initially done, there was irrigation on the slope. Is that still there? Because it would be interesting to have your guests being sprinkled as they went to the beach.
No, I assume it would stay there, but it will be moved away from the areas around the stairs. The irrigation is necessary for I believe up to the first 3 years to get the plants really stabilized, but after that we remove those.
Just as a comment, initial comments from your side were that this was being done really for the convenience of the guests who had to walk all the way to the fish pier or to the driveway at the edge of these units. You know, a quick look at the plan suggests that that means they'd have to walk at most 300 feet in one direction or the other, and it would seem they'd have to walk exactly the same distance to get to the stairs in the middle. So help me understand why this is somehow safer than walking down the sidewalk and then down the stairs at either end. Related to that is the rationale for having a deck right in the middle, which is certainly not an essential element for walking down to the beach. It really is essentially a plateau, a viewing stand, a structure right in the middle of the coastal bank. And it's not our position to talk about that. That's for the Conservation Commission. But given that it is there, it would seem that issues such as lighting, you had already mentioned a rinsing station at the bottom, which requires that there be water brought down to the beach from up top. Signage as well, indicating what to do, not to do, et cetera, making it closed to the public. And I'm just curious as to really get a little bit more as to the rationale for why this is necessary. It doesn't seem to be necessary to get to the beach. People have to walk just as far. It might be nice to have the viewing platforms at the top and in the middle, but that wasn't the rationale that was presented. So I'm interested in your comment.
Yep,
Right.
again,
Nate?
yeah, I'll speak to that at first. Existing right now, it's not about 300 feet to get to the beach. It's more about 1,000, depending on which unit you're coming from and which direction you're going. And the stairs itself are about 100 feet long. So it is a pretty substantial decrease in distance, as well as convenience. I mean, and trying to walk 1,000 feet with a handful of beach chairs or a cooler or, you know, boogie board, whatever beach items you want, could be a little bit more difficult. And having the stairs, you know, right in your backyard would be a much bigger convenience. And same thing for the platform. So these guests, you know, they could be carrying a couple coolers or something going up and down. So you'd like to have a resting point at least on these stairs.
And just to follow up on that, to your point about the landing, in the alley staff report, there is an initial comment from the conservation agent mentioning as well the size of the landing, and I presume that is something that will also be discussed at conservation later this week.
Mm-hmm. As I say, I thank you for those comments. I think 1,000 feet seems a little odd. That's 2/3 of a mile, which you only have to walk. But at any rate, without fifth of a mile. Sorry, I was thinking yards. The proposal, I think, as it comes forward, should address things such as signage, the lighting that would be proposed. It would seem that on such a long set of stairs, especially at night, that some sort of lighting would be needed. I don't think there's much in the way of abutters to be concerned about, but at the same time, it ought to be downward facing, et cetera, et cetera. It does seem to me that the rinsing station ought to be included in the plans, and what kind of signage would be there. We have an interest, but not nearly as much as the Conservation Commission in the landscaping that would be proposed. But that also ought to be shown on the site plan that would be presented and be an element of the presentation as to how it would be proposed to be landscaped. I really have no further comments, so thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Bob Wirtschafter will
Yeah,
go next.
I'm not quite sure, at the top of the hill, is there a fence that keeps people from running down the hill to get to the beach? There is a fence now that prevents people from doing that?
Yeah, currently there is a fence along the top of the slope.
Okay, so, I mean, one of the reasons that I would have been, that I would be more favorable for this would be to stop people from getting down that hill without the steps. Because I think the steps is a better alternative and more sustainable than having that hill and having people running down the hill. So if the fence is there, that takes away that justification that I was going to try and give you. I really don't have other comments on this. I do agree that the observation deck seems to be large. I would say, though, that having only one set of benches for that climb for people coming up with all that gear is probably insufficient, and you probably do need a second resting place for people who are climbing back up the hill. So I think that something there is acceptable, maybe not quite that big. That's all I have. Art.
Thank you, Bob. Tom Gagan, any comments or
Yes,
questions?
I'm Gagan, thank you. My observation is that, if I'm correct, is that the structure is going to be made from PT, which is a type of wood, preserved wood. Is that correct, that will be the construction material for this platform, pressure treated?
Yes, but it won't be in contact with the ground. The foundation is helical piles, which are steel, and then the PT would rest on the steel, so it wouldn't be in contact with the ground.
What will the decking be made from that will be on this PT for the walkway? Will that also be PT?
I'm actually not quite sure on the decking. Chris, if you're on the line, do you know what the decking material is?
I would probably be using mahogany personally. I don't think we ever talked about it, but I think mahogany would be the material of choice.
The only reason I bring this up is I'm currently in the process of redoing my outside shower floor. We've been in the property for 15 years, and I did have a material which I thought would last 15 years, but in this environment, it began to splinter, and PT does that also. I'm replacing it. I'm not asking you to do anything other than what you'll be approved of, but I'm replacing it with a polyvinyl material, which is as dense as heck. I can only lift a couple of boards at a time, but I think that will certainly outlive me and is a lot safer in terms of any potential for splintering. I assume that people may be walking in this area barefoot, so if you could rethink at least the walkway material, something that is going to do better in this rather caustic environment we have next to the shore, might be helpful. Your run distance I scaled off is 550 feet, and as Bob has pointed out, maybe there'll be some older folks like me visiting CBI. I don't know, I can make it 550 feet with blankets and towels and chairs, but that may be another consideration. Other than that, I sponsor or support the idea that this makes a better access to the beach for these units and in control of any erosion or people walking on the embankment. I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
May I just speak to the material on the stairs for a second? This is Chris Cannon speaking. One of the reasons that I recommend wood is I've had a lot of experience with the PVC products, and with bare feet, those products in an 80-degree temperature can well exceed 100 110 degrees, they can burn your feet out in the sun. They're not the most practical. They're also incredibly slippery when they get wet. So that's one of the reasons I tend to use wood. We can treat the wood in a way that that it will, avoid splinters. And aside from that, my experience with whether it's teak or mahogany or ipe, there should not be any splintering issues over time, and should last a good 25, 30 years.
I agree, but what I've found in the same situation inside a shower, a home shower, is that there's a textured material out there. It does become slippery or can become slippery, and also the textured material seems to help with a greater surface area for heat, but I'm not an expert in this area. I just like to see that whatever's put down for the decking can be as safe as possible.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Bob Dubus, any comments or questions of the applicant?
Yeah, first of all, I'm in favor of seeing some sort of way to get down to the beach from that area. I know it'll make it a lot easier for the guests. My concerns are, one, I see it down the property line, and I just wondered why it was down the center of the property line. Rather, what happens if someday these get subdivided up and I don't suppose they want to take it down? It's a little large for me. I think the resting area is a good idea. The viewing platform is a little large for me, but that's my assumption over there. I would not like to see runners from CBI running hot food or lunches and stuff up and down the stairs as an access to the beach there. I do foresee the people staying there bringing their lunch and stuff, but I'm not in favor of an actual runner or runners up and down there from the inn. But I think it's it's going to be quite a landscape, but I think it's a needed thing for the inn to keep people off the banking and have access to the beach.
This is Andrew. If I could respond to the comment about, it was a good question about the property line. We've discussed this with planning and zoning staff. While these are 10 separate properties for title purposes, they have been merged for zoning and building purposes. And there is a plan of record that this board signed, I believe, or it might have been an 81X plan, but it's in the file that does indicate that the lots are treated as one for zoning and building. And so while it is technically on a property line for title purposes, for zoning it is not. And it's actually been located there because, and Nate can address this more if desired, from an environmental point of view, it's the best location to have a set of stairs. But I did want to just respond to that comment because we had looked at that.
Thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Bob. And Roger Griffin, any comments or questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I assume coastal engineering, you'll be doing all the work? The construction itself?
We don't do construction, but we will oversee the construction.
You oversee it, okay. Only because I had gone on the website and I had seen the, I saw a photograph of Aquasit, and it reminded me very much of the patios at the top. That's what I've seen in the brochure. Is that the same? I'm just curious.
Yeah, we did some work for Wasset.
all right.
It wasn't specifically me, but.
And now the other thing I'd looked at, I'd also looked at, I guess just some comparing, and again, I saw that on the website too, Town Neck Beach in Sandwich. And it has a new set of stairs, and I guess what I was looking at, and I just, again, it was a great distance. I guess my concern is the same thing everyone had tonight, is I think the stairs are a necessity, but I wonder if it's more cumbersome than it needs to be. I guess the lounge halfway down or whatever, I guess I wonder, that has me concerned. I think sometimes I feel we have to balance it. I guess I'm very much more simplistic. I think Chatham always does a great job with everything you do, there's no doubt. And I think the stairs are a good idea. At the same time, the other side of the coin is I look at it and I guess I'm a naturalist. I see the fish pier, I see the natural of everything, and it's quiet, and now I'm looking at, wow, now we look to my right and I see all the stairs. And I think it's necessary, but I think we should be looking at how do we accomplish what you need done without really, because there's another side too, we have to look what's good for the public and people in Chatham. And they're gonna look at that set of stairs, and I look at it visually, even from the sketches, I think it's, I don't know, is there any way we can probably do something that's maybe a little bit more pleasing to the eye? And that's it, that's all the question I have.
Okay, thank you, Roger. All right, this is Art Sprue. I have a series of questions, well, actually not questions, really. I'm taking a look at this as an opportunity to identify some things that I think would be relevant and important for the board to see as part of the final application. So most of my comments relate to a list of things that I think you should be showing on the final application to help the board make a decision associated with this. And I'm looking at this as, it's a pedestrian walkway. There's safety issues associated with it that we have to look for. This is site more than building, so I think it falls significantly under our purview to scrutinize it a little bit more than what we would normally do. So here's a couple of things. Some of the board members have mentioned this already. There's, you say lighting and water. You're going to be providing some utilities. So I'd like to see where the utilities are coming from, the pathway on the site, where they are underground, and then, of course, where are the existing utilities in case there are conflicts in that. The other thing is you're going to be constructing this, and you're going to need staging areas and construction access to get to this. I think because these buildings are so tightly together and there's walkways in that, I think you need to identify that on a plan. Again, the whole idea is to make sure that those areas are closed off or isolated so that pedestrians are not going to get injured associated with walking adjacent to them, or they make sure that they know that those are areas that they're supposed to be away from. You mentioned that there is no traffic, no parking impacts, and you also state there's no stormwater impacts. I don't agree with you on that. I don't have all the details on your decking system in that, but it appears that there's over 700 square feet of impervious area you're creating here. Therefore, I want to see some stormwater management that you're going to be proposing on this. You're constructing this or proposing to construct this over a vegetated area within the buffer zone, and I think that's important that we're not creating any kind of a washout or point source discharges on the bank there. Therefore, I think you have to manage this. So I would like to see how are you going to deal and address the stormwater management on this so that you're not going to be eroding the whole area. You're going to be building this in that area. I'd like to see a sedimentation control and erosion plan, a control plan associated with this on how you're doing that. You're showing the limits of the work. I want to understand that you're going to be protecting all the areas outside of those limits from any kind of activity that you have. This is just a preference of mine. When I was looking at the scales here, the drawings that we have, you can't put a scale on them. They're not reduced to exactly 100% or 50%. It's best if you put a bar scale on there. That'll help in case we want to take some quick measurements and get some feel on the scale on that. So I'd like to see some bar scales on this, so in case they are reduced sets of drawings that we receive, that we can actually identify any dimensions. You show on there access, you're going to be removing a section of the stair, and this is the one that's the closest to shoreline, on a seasonal basis. I think it's important that you identify to us how you're going to go about doing that. Are you going to be accessing this from any particular area and removing it with any particular piece of equipment, or are you just going to stockpile it on the shoreline? I think you need to identify to us how you're going to be doing that, and if it is going to be removed completely from the shoreline and not just staged there. You are calling for a retaining wall. I think you need to resubmit some design and details associated with that retaining wall, the extent of it, and the type of retaining wall it is. So if there's significant excavation associated with it, if it's a cast-in-place wall, then we need to understand how much impact to the shoreline that you're doing as part of this work. That's a little bit different than when you're dealing with the helical piles that you're talking about. I think you need to provide all the details associated with the construction of this, since you are going to be working in this zone. What's the duration that you're going to be out there doing this? We've had some experiences here where what should have been a 6-month project sometimes turns into a 2-year project. And I think we'd like to identify and understand how you're going about the construction on this so that we can understand the duration, and we'd like to get you in and out of the area as soon as possible. Now, certainly some of these things are overlapping with the Conservation Commission. You may have to address it with them, and that's fine. We'd like to see some of this information as part of your application to us, though. The more we understand about this, the easier it will be for us to progress through and give you an approval on it. You're also talking about soil borings. You have soil borings shown on the plans. I think you need to submit those, especially if you're going to do any kind of stormwater management, and understanding if you're going to do infiltration, how you're going to do it, and where you're going to do it. You talked about modifying the fence. I don't know if that's a new fence or replacement of an existing fence. I think you need to identify that to us. But I think Warren mentioned about the landscaping. You're also indicated on the preliminary plan application, removal of trees. You need to identify which trees are being removed, and if you're going to replace those with any proposed trees, and where those would be located. You also mentioned that you're going to the Conservation Commission later on this week. If the Conservation Commission's meeting, they make some changes or edits to your proposed plan in here, and they change the configuration of it, I think it would be best if you modify the plan, make those changes before you submit your application to us, the final application to us. Otherwise, if you get an approval from us on this plan and then the Concom changes the whole plan, you're going to have to come back for us for an amendment. So I would suggest from a sequence that after you hear the first part of the Conservation Commission meeting, even if they continue it, you might get a flavor for what your final plan would be if it's different than the one you're proposing. If they agree with the plan as you propose it, that's fine. But it's best for us as a board not to go through a cycle process, because we would want to have the plan amendment if it was going to be modified from what we approve. Again, these I don't need any responses to any of my comments in here. This is mostly for a heads up of what we'd be looking for our final plan. You certainly can comment on it. Any comments from the applicant before I go on?
This is Andrew Singer. The main comment I just want to make is I appreciate all the comments, and we will definitely be looking at them and we'll revise as necessary. As you said, we don't necessarily be able to answer everything tonight, but we can address the comments that you all are making. Yep. And asking. Yes.
Good. All right. So before we go to the public comment question area, I would like to ask the board members. There's two things that we need to decide on here. One, do we want to hold a formal public hearing on this? And two, do we want to actually have a site visit with all board members on this? Anyone who would like to start off the conversation? Because I think we need to decide on both of these points tonight. I don't think we have to define, when. I think it's just whether we want to actually do either or both.
Tom Gagan.
Tom, go ahead.
To answer your questions, I think that public meeting process on this is not necessary. I think this is a relatively private area. I don't think the public has a lot or any access to this, so I don't see the benefit of inviting the public into a meeting on this. But anytime I can get Chatham bars in and walk around without being arrested, I'm being facetious. But I'd like to see the slope. I'd like to see exactly where it's going to go. I think that's beneficial to get into my mind the visuals that this board is charged at looking for and looking at. So I would be in favor of a site view, site plan review, and again, to repeat myself, I don't think the public needs to be invited into a meeting specifically for this project.
Bob?
I'm going to agree completely with what he just said.
Yep.
This is Warren Chain. I also don't believe that a public hearing is warranted here. It's really quite a private area. There are no abutters to have opinions. This is not going to be for the public use, so public comment about it seems unnecessary. As for a site visit, I've already visited the site, and I didn't feel that it was difficult to identify where it was going to be. So I don't feel personally that a site visit is warranted.
Bob Dubus, your thoughts on that?
I don't think we need a meeting, a public meeting. But if the board wants to go, the rest of the board wants to go, I'm fine with that. Either way, it doesn't bother me. I lived with that hill for all my life.
Okay. Roger, your thoughts on this?
I don't think we need a public meeting, and, I've taken a good walk around the property. If we want to go, great, but I don't need one. I'm good.
Okay. And I agree with the other board members. I was not thinking that a public meeting was necessary, but that's part of what we do. I would like to go on a site visit. I think it would be helpful if several of us were there. But if you want to go independently, that's fine too. I think, Ally, that's something that if maybe after we get the final application, we might schedule that before the hearing, before the meeting, the final site plan meeting.
Yeah, this is Warren Chain. It might be useful to have a site visit after the Conservation Commission has reviewed and made their comments, and then potentially even after a revised plan submission by the applicant had been received, and so that we would have relevant observations or questions during the site visit.
Okay?
Arthur?
Yes.
Arthur, I think if individual board members or the board in general is invited, we invite ourselves to a site meeting. This is a very private area,
Yeah.
a beach area, and I think it would be prudent of us to go as a unit,
It's a group.
so that we're not,
I agree.
yeah, we don't want to involve ourselves with
Yep.
people who are on vacation.
All right, then next, Ally, I'd like to ask if you can take a look at the board and tell us if there are any public who have raised their hands or would like to make a comment at this point.
This is Ally. I do not see any public raising their hand or wishing to comment.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, yes,
This
go
is
right ahead.
This is Andrew Singer. We'd be happy to coordinate a site visit with Ally, after tonight, just, and the point that was raised about after conservation and if there are going to be revised plans, that makes a lot of sense, and we could coordinate with her to set up something once you have those plans to look at.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, so at this point, I think what we need to do is take a motion to accept the application for the pre-application for this site plan, If anybody can make a motion for that?
Tom Gagan, I'd like to make a motion to accept the preliminary application.
Yeah. Second?
Bob Wirtschafter seconds.
Okay. With that, we'll do a roll call vote. Warren Chain,
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Tom Gigan,
Tom Gagan, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
and Roger Griffin.
Roger Griffin, approve.
And this is Art Sprue, and I approve also. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
And with that, I'll invite the chair back and to take over the meeting for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Arthur. All right, so thank you all. Before we go on to the reorganization of the board, we just wanted to take a little time for some chairman's comments. I just wanted to review, we have been in a special situation over the past year or 18 months due to COVID-19, and we have been meeting remotely. At this point, we are making the transition to meeting in person again, but we will continue with the ability for the public to connect via Teams or by phone. In some cases, we'll also have our applicants or presenters being connected remotely. So we will be continuing with this kind of hybrid situation. I also wanted to mention that during COVID-19, when we were meeting remotely, since the initial restrictions put in place by Governor Baker in March 2020, there were certain restrictions on regulatory boards. And at that time, the planning board was instructed to only review regulatory matters, and in that case, only necessary regulatory matters. So we were instructed to minimize meeting activity and to review only regulatory matters. At a certain point, these restrictions eased, and Ally and I we actually had to seek special permission to reopen our long-range planning initiative on West Chatham, which we did because we are working with the Cape Cod Commission, and there are some time deadlines on the grant that's funding that work. So with special permission, we did reopen reviewing the long-range planning work on West Chatham. Our next meeting, which is July 26th, we will again meet with the Cape Cod Commission to continue with our work on the rezoning initiative for the West Chatham Neighborhood Center. At that point, again, we'll be doing a hybrid meeting. Cape Cod Commission will connect with us remotely. The Planning Board will be present in this room. Anyone from the public will be connecting remotely for that. And tentatively for August 9th, for the next meeting after that, we have a meeting with the Airport Commission scheduled. Again, this is tentative. That meeting, I understand, Planning Board will be present, Airport Commission will be present, Town Council and the FAA consultant to the Airport Commission, Matt, will likely be connected remotely, and the public will be connected remotely. So Ally and I just wanted to advise you that we will be moving along with this kind of hybrid system, and also just to remind you that our long-range planning initiatives, for the most part, have been on hold for the past 18 months, but now that we're making this transition, we'd like to, and we need to pick up our long-range planning initiatives again. Obviously, West Chatham is something that's in process. We'll continue with that, but just a reminder that we have a number of long-range planning initiatives that have been on our agenda for some time. Many of them are results of the visioning study that was done by the Cape Cod Commission in 2013 and 2014 on the Route 28 visioning study, and we're still working on implementing those recommendations. The rezoning of the West Chatham Neighborhood Center is part of that, as will be the consideration of any rezoning for the other neighborhood centers of the Cornfield and Kroll Road. Those are still continuations of implementing the recommendations that came out of that Route 28 visioning study. And just all of this, all of the long-range planning initiatives that the board has undertaken are falling under that umbrella mandate that we have to implement the comprehensive plan of the town of Chatham. So we just wanted to bring that up because we're at this transition point where we can now, again, begin to look at our long-range planning. Again, a reminder that we did begin before COVID, we began on the consideration of the scale and massing of residential structures. Bob Wirtschafter and Ally did an enormous amount of work analyzing the situation in Chatham with regard to that issue. We have all that on file, and at when we can consider it appropriate and practical again, we'll want to pick up that consideration. We also have the other neighborhood centers to consider, as I mentioned. We also have to take a look at the floodplain bylaw. That needs to be restructured. That was reviewed prior to annual town meeting in 2016, and some revisions to the floodplain bylaw were passed at annual town meeting in 2016, but we again need to review that. Also on our agenda are the review of our site plan review criteria and subdivision rules and regulation. And you may recall that the board approved that Arthur would work on drafting some new subdivision rules and regulations. We'll be following up on that, and Ally and I and Tom Temple will meet with Arthur. I think it's next week coming up. And when there's a draft ready, that will come before the board, and we'll consider those revisions. Again, have I forgotten anything? I think, again, just a reminder that we're going to pick up our long-range planning activities now, and we will schedule a more formal discussion for the board in an upcoming meeting so that we can look at it all together and decide priorities and how to go forward. And we also want to consider our priorities vis-a-vis the priorities that the Board of Selectmen set. And I understand that fairly soon the Board of Selectmen are going to be determining their priorities for the coming year. And we'll see how those interface with the work of the Planning Board. And we'll also take a look at that. So,
Point of clarification, Madam Chair?
yes, please go ahead.
Tom Gagan, do we have a specific date scheduled by which we're going to be meeting in concert with the airport commissioners?
Well, as I mentioned, it's tentative for August 9th. Ally, did you want to comment on that?
We do have a tentative date scheduled for August 9th, our August 9th meeting. But again, it's tentative. I'm still making sure that everyone can attend that meeting because we did have it scheduled for tonight, but we obviously wanted to make sure that everyone was comfortable with this new setup before we went forward with it. So it is tentative right now. I just need to confirm with a few of the different consultants that we want to make sure are here.
Thank you. Further clarification, at that meeting, if it takes place on August 9th or at a predetermined date in the future, will the members of the Airport Commission, the commissioners, be with us in a public session? And who will be excluded from the public session? Is it the public itself in terms of a hybrid system? The individuals in terms of town council, the commissioners, the planning board, what other individuals or groups will be allowed to meet with us in public as we meet here now?
So we are in a fluid situation. We're still trying to kind of slowly get everyone back into this, in-person format. We'll always have, at least for the next year-ish, I can foresee that we'll have this hybrid setup, if not longer. But I did ask the members, and it won't be the entire airport commission, it'll just be a few of the members, if they felt comfortable coming in person, and they did feel comfortable. So they were fine coming in person. Town council and the airport consultant, just because of, the distance that they're traveling, we felt it was better to have them virtual. So just like the applicant was virtual today, it would be the exact same thing. So we could still, talk with them, interface with them. They would just be on the screen, not in person. And then for the public, we're still trying to figure out at what point, to be able to invite the public in. We're looking at the Board of Selectmen as the lead with that, and they haven't done that so far. I think that they are planning on gearing that up and ramping it up to have that ability, but we're just really trying to be diligent and cautious and do it slowly so everyone feels comfortable.
I'd like to make a suggestion. I think that the meeting, when it takes place with the airport commissioners, is of vital importance to the town of Chatham and its citizen base. I would like to see if this board could not enforce, but certainly encourage and wish that every member of the Airport Commission be present at that meeting. It's so important for what we've been discussing as a town that just to have representatives of the Airport Commission here, I don't think it does just service to the issues that we need to talk about. So I'd like to enforce as best we can enforce, if the board sees that that's something important to us, that every member of the commission, the Airport Commission, be present at that meeting.
Bob Wirtschafter, I think you had some comments?
Yeah, I just want a clarification in terms of our participation. It's only allowed in person? We cannot participate remotely?
No, you are, of course, welcome to participate remotely as well. So if you, feel like you have to be away or something like that and you'd rather be remote, it is, of course, you are eligible to do that.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions on what we've been talking about our meeting procedures or about long-range planning initiatives getting restarted? Yes, Mr. Gagan.
Tom Gagan, have we made I just made a comment and I don't hear anything from the board as to what the board members would like to see and address in terms of the airport commissioners be present. Is that something we should determine at this meeting and have a discussion of it?
Bob Wirtschafter, please go ahead.
I mean, we can't demand that every member of a board attend our meeting. We could hold a joint meeting and then attendance, would be whatever it is. And if they don't get a quorum, does that mean we no longer have a meeting? I mean, so I don't think we can tell the Airport Commission, force them to come. It would be a cooperative meeting, and hopefully everyone would feel like they could come, but we can't demand that they come.
This is Catherine Halpern speaking. I just wanted to comment. Ally, is there any, overarching in terms of the requirements that we have right now? Could we invite the entire commission to be present rather than remote?
So we could, I do need to check with Channel 18 to make sure that we have the capacity in the room to be able to do that, just because right now we are a little social distanced. So I'll have to figure out those kind of mechanics that go along behind it, the scenes as well. But I would be happy to, share the invitation with the Airport Commission to say that, if the entire commission would like to join, we could have a joint meeting together, as long as it's feasible behind the scenes.
Well,
Yes, Mr. Gagan.
the rationale for my request is that my observation is we hear from the same airport commissioners over and over again. I'm not saying that's necessarily bad or negative, but I'd like to see as many of the airport commissioners here And I agree with Bob is that we as a board can't force them to come, but perhaps we certainly could encourage them to come. I think it's important enough for them to come as individual members, and I'd like to see as many of the commissioners here, not just the same representation, continually over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So it seems to me there's no harm in inviting the entire commission to be present if we can handle it technically. And I mean, for that matter, we would want to invite town council and the FAA consultant, Matt, to also be present. But Matt is in New Hampshire, town council is in Boston, so it might not be possible. It might be more convenient for them to participate remotely. So it might just simply be a technical issue that if we have the capacity, we could invite all of the local airport commission and, for that matter, town council and Matt, although it's probably likely that it'll be more convenient for them to be remote. Is that all right, Ally?
That's fine. I'll just have to do a little coordinating behind the scenes, like I said, with the Channel 8 team, but I will extend the invite to the entire airport commission.
And it's an invitation. Okay. All right, any other comments? Comments from the public, perhaps? Any board comments? Okay. So with that being done, we'll move on to other business, which is our annual reorganization of the board. And as you know, we have 3 officers. We have clerk and vice chair and chair. And right now, as is our tradition, usually the newest member of the board is clerk, and Roger Griffin has been serving as clerk. And Arthur Sprue is vice chair. I am chair. It's our current officers. So why don't we start with clerk, again, our tradition, and see if we have nomination for clerk. And by the way, it's fine for people to just continue.
Can I make a motion that we keep the existing set of officers or whatever they're called, and that I make a motion that we accept all 3 of you to continue in your current jobs?
Well, thank you. Is it all right to do all 3 at once? Ally, is there any restriction on that? Just double checking.
I don't think there's a restriction, but if there's other nominations.
I actually, this is Art Sprue. I support what you're saying, Bob. I'm interested in continuing, but I would like to continue as the vice chair.
Yes.
I dug into my assignment for this beginning of this year, and it's much more than I had anticipated, which is not a surprise. I've been doing a lot of research. I have a lot of background. It's going to help to flush this out in the next several months with meetings with Ally, Bob Duncanson, and Tom Temple and others, and get it to a point that maybe by the end of the year, the fall at the earliest, that we could start sharing some of this, because I think it's going to take some time for us to actually get our heads around what is it that we want to do with these regulations. They won't be 1 or 2 pages. It's going to be significant. I mean, stormwater alone, we don't have any regulations on it, and it's important that we get our head around it, but not too much. I mean, I'm very conscious of not going crazy with this, but if it's important, let's make sure that the information that we want is consistent to what we should be asking for. The good thing about this is if I get a draft or something available by the fall or sometime the end of this year, that could be put into any agenda at any time. There's nothing that says it has to be done now or later, or if there's something that was taken off the agenda and there's an opening, we can have a half an hour, 45-minute discussion about certain things, because I think it's going to take several meetings of deliberation just to decide what is it that we want to put in here. So I'm more than willing to stay on as vice chair.
Great. So we have a motion that Roger Griffin will continue as clerk, Arthur Sprue will continue as vice chair, and Catherine Halpern will continue as chair. do we have any discussion, other nominations, or a second to that motion?
Well, this is Warren Chain. I second that motion. I think it's highly appropriate, especially given COVID, when there has been lack of ability to pursue many of the avenues that the current officers were elected to pursue. So I think it's highly appropriate that we continue, and I second the motion.
Thank you, Warren. And Tom?
I have
Go
other
ahead.
nominations.
I'm sorry?
I have other nominations.
Please go
nominees.
ahead.
Yes, I have said this for the last 2 years, and I purposely stepped down as the vice chair because I had served several years in that position. I believe in term limits. I'm very aware of what we do as human beings when we're in a position of power for all of us. And I believe that members of this board should be given the chance and the opportunity to step into the administration of this board. So I support a rotation of the board members through this process. We seem to have an issue where we all find it very comfortable to continue. I don't find it comfortable to continue with any one person or set of individuals. I think it doesn't do justice to this board. And we've seen evidence in this town and other towns where people get in a position for 8, 10, 12 years in administration, and it's not always in the best principle or value to the town. I would like to nominate Arthur Sprue as chair, and I'd like to nominate Warren Chain as the vice chair.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor, and we also have alternative nominations. Any discussion?
I will rescind
Bob
my-
Wertschafter?
I would like to rescind my motion and that we just, that we vote or we have some discussion about changes. I guess my first
Okay.
question would be your willingness to step down or continue. Can we hear a little bit from you in terms of where you feel you are?
Yes. I mean, I'm perfectly willing to continue. And how to say, I've been chair now, I think, for 2 years.
No, Madam Chair, I nominated you for chair 3 years ago, and under that board, you became chair. Before that, you were the vice chair when Peter Kokolas left his chair, and we had a couple of private conversations, I think, and I asked if you would like to be chair, and at that point, 3 years ago, you said you would like to take that position. So you've been chair for 3 years, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you for that correction.
Well, this is Warren Chain. Thank you for the honor of being proposed as vice chair. I heard Art say that he would like to continue, but only as vice chair. So, and while I respect the nomination, I'm not sure that I have been here long enough without COVID in the way to feel comfortable with many of the roles, regulations, and bylaws with which we deal. So I'm not sure that I am prepared for the role of vice chair. But I don't know what I don't know, so it's difficult to be definitive on that. But would ask that the other board members take note of the fact that, I'm still kind of the rookie almost on the board, and there's a lot of expertise here that I would like to benefit from, not necessarily try and lead.
Thank you, Warren. Bob Dubus, did you have a comment?
Yes, the Art Sprue. I'm not opposed in the future to be chair. I mean, I served on the planning board for 17 years before I came to Chatham. I was chair there three years. It's it's a all-encompassing role. I heard the list of priorities that we have on our list. There's quite a few. There was a significant pause that happened that we could have gone through and perhaps checked some of the boxes off on some of these. We hadn't done that, and it's unfortunate. I got started into the rules and regulations, which I'll be honest with you. I told that to the Board of Selectmen when I was first appointed. They were very interested in me and pursuing that. I was very patient and said, okay, let's get some of the other items out of the way. I finally got a green light beginning of this year, and I dug into it. I want to continue with that, and it's going to take me the year to do that. I would like, and I'm asking the board members, let me continue in the vice chair role, focus on this. I don't know that I could do the rest of it justice if I have my heart and soul set to finish this out. So my preference would be, let me finish this, and then I'll be happy to entertain any consideration in the future.
Any other comments or discussion? Bob Wertschafter, please go ahead.
Resubmit my motion that we approve the three of you.
Thank you, Bob. Yes, do I have a second? Before I ask for a second to that motion, I just want to make a comment that, I feel that at this time, everyone on the planning board has stellar credentials and qualifications to participate in this board, and that Arthur and Warren certainly have great credentials, background, and what I've seen, very intelligent input and review to take on these positions in future. If I could suggest, I am willing to continue. This is a transition time, and it might be actually helpful to the board overall to have some continuity at least for the next term. So that's what I'd suggest. We do have a motion on the floor that the three in place continue, that Roger continues as clerk, Arthur as vice chair, Catherine as chair. Do we have more discussion or a second to that motion?
I've heard this argument, Catherine, from other chairs. I've had discussions with Katie Donovan about 2 years ago, and I offered at that time to put into the manuscript that we have about how boards and committees handle themselves, and wanted to talk about forming a committee to very specifically dedicate some time and energy to term limits. As I've said over and over again, it's not personal. It is a situation where we get comfortable, and there's always something in front of us as boards and committees and commissions that say, well, you should just continue, you should just continue. That's not necessarily a negative, but we get comfortable with that, and it makes the rest of the board members comfortable with that. I think we have a board here that works very well with one another. I'd like to see more assignments given. I'd like to see more interaction between the board members and the chair, vice chair, in terms of parting out some of the duties and obligations we have as a board. This board did very, very well, unified when we were in concert on the ADU. That was a real big feather in this board's cap. We were able to muster a lot of sentiment, which was potentially negative in the community, by having this board get together and assign assignments to each other, reach out to organizations that we were personally involved with outside of this board. Those are the kinds of efforts that I think the board should be addressing. I'm just not convinced that the same people should have the same task over and over again. We have nothing in the bylaw, we have nothing in any document that I tried to put together. It went up through administration, and actually had Katie talk to the town manager about this issue. That has come forward. I just think that we become comfortable, and that is an issue where the rest of the board needs to grow as individual members. I don't think we have any slackers here. I think the fact that someone may have been a board member for a bit longer than others is rewarding. I think the board is stable, at least my observation of the members is stability and working with one another. My recourse to this is, again, my mantra is that we shouldn't be relying on the same people over and over again. We had a member of a board, of a commission, that had been in that position for 10 years, and it just became untenable. That person came before this board and actually threatened us on the ADU at one point in time, because that person said, either I'll be the chair or I'll be the vice chair. I'm now currently the vice chair, I'll be the chair next year. I don't want that power struggle. I don't want that power base. Again, present company excluded. I'm a firm believer that we're all capable of doing the work, and if we share that base, and it shouldn't be just the chair or the vice chair, if we share that base, that we have enough people here are dedicated, who want to go on site walks, who want to do the right thing for the town, and that's who we're employed by. We're employed by what's the best interest in this town, and I would like to support that we share the obligations of this board among the board members.
Thanks, Tom. I'd just like to respond to your comments. Again, I think this past year, or even 18 months, has been unusual due to COVID-19. The board has been under some restrictions that were by state law to consider only necessary regulatory matters. So I think for at least the past 18 months, there may have been restricted participation and restricted duties, on the part of board members. I think prior to COVID, certainly with the ADU bylaw, but also for many years prior to that, on many projects, there have been subcommittees and task forces and greater participation of all board members in our long-range planning efforts and in other efforts. So I see no reason why that can't continue into the future. And that's one reason why we had, the little comments tonight that we are at that transition point where we're going to pick up a lot of our long-range planning initiatives again, and there will be more participation of all of us. As I mentioned, for example, in the past, it was Bob Wirtschafter and Ally who worked on the research for the potential bylaw amendment concerning massing and scaling of residential structures. So certainly we will be doing more of that in the future. So I think Bob Wirtschafter or Warren, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to, first of all, say there's a very big difference between 3 years and 10 years. I think, usually in all the boards I've been on, if they're term limits, it's either 2 or 3 consecutive periods, which would either be 6 years or 9 years, and then you have to step off. And it applies to both the executive positions and members. But this is a volunteer position, and I am happy to stay on the planning board, but if I'm going to be required to be the chair, I will step down because I have just accepted more responsibility from my other position on the Energy and Climate Action Committee, which is taken on a much broader scope. So I don't have the time, and I'm not volunteering to be the chair. I don't think anybody else has stepped up to even take that position, so I think it's a bit of a non-issue at this point. I accept what you're saying, Tom, but we can't get rid of our chair if nobody else is willing to take that position.
Warren, did you have a comment as well?
Yes, Warren Chain. I have a lot of feeling in favor of Tom's comments. As an abstract comment or comments about how organizations such as ours ought to be run. But I do believe that under the current circumstances, where you, Madam Chairman, have really had your hands tied for the last, well, ever since I've been on the board, basically, and our Vice Chair has just taken the bit in his teeth and is excited about the activities that he expects to pursue. And those would be thwarted, both your efforts as well as his, if you are taken out of your positions. With new positions, I have no idea what Arnott, is doing. To put me in his position is, I'm not sure, a positive to where we are as a board right now today, even though I agree completely with the comments that Tom has made. And in general, I think that it is healthy, if not essential, to ensure that there is, changing of the guard at various times. But again, I think this is not one of those times, given the interest and expressed interest of our current Vice Chair, as well as you as Madam Chairman. And again, if it wasn't seconded, I just seconded it once. I'll second the motion a second time, that all of the existing officers retain their positions.
Just a comment. So we do have a motion on the floor, and the motion's been seconded. Also, I just want to comment in response to Mr. Gagan's comments that if the board is to consider term limits, as Bob Wirtschafter mentioned, we would need to determine what are the term limits. Would it be 1 term or 2 terms, which would be 6 years, something like that. So that would be something that we'd want to determine in the future. Right now, we don't have that determined. Mr. Gagan, did you want to make another comment?
The comment I would make, Madam Chair, is I'd like to put this to a vote.
All right, we can put it to a vote. So we have a motion on the floor to allow the current officers, which is Roger Griffin as clerk, and Arthur Sprue as vice chair, and Catherine Halpern as chair, to continue for another year. And we have that motion seconded. So let's do a roll call vote. I'll start with Roger Griffin.
Clarify what you're
We're just doing a roll call vote.
Right.
Yeah.
To approve. I approve.
Great. And Arthur Sprue?
Art Sprue, approve.
And Warren Chain?
Warren Chain, I approve.
Bob Wirtschafter?
Bob Wirtschafter, I approve.
Tom Gagan?
Tom Gagan, I approve.
Thank you, Tom Gagan. Bob Dubus?
I approve.
Thank you. And this is Catherine Halpern. I
It's
actually
important,
also approve.
Catherine, that we have unity on this board, and although I bring up the question over and over again about term limits, it's important that we have unity and trust in one another.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I agree. It is important to have unity, trust, and cooperation. It's also possible to have differences of opinion, and all of our votes do not need to...
Never argue with an Irishman.
Okay. And all
They
of
never
our,
lose, you know.
okay. And all of our votes don't need to be unanimous, so, that's also totally fine. So, again, I appreciate the discussion. I think, maybe what we need to do in future is consider together as a board this issue of term limits and how properly we need to consider that vis-a-vis what other boards do and what the town protocols are. So we can certainly do that.
Catherine, thank you for that sentiment. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right. Are there any other comments from board members before we?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to adjourn. I just need to ask if there's any comments from the public before we do that. No. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second it. Bob
All right,
Dubus.
so let's do a roll call vote. Roger Griffin? You approve, all right. And Arthur Spru?
Arthur Spru, approve.
Warren Chain?
Warren Chain, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter?
Bob Wirtschafter, approved.
Tom Gagan?
Let me think about it. I approve.
Bob Dubus?
I don't know if I can approve it. I don't know who made it.
Okay,
I
great.
approve.
And this is Catherine Halpern. I approve the motion to adjourn. It is 7:26. We'll note the time of adjournment. 6:26, sorry. 6:26 is the time of adjournment. Thank you for participating, and thank you, Ally. Thank you to the public, and this meeting is adjourned.